What's up, everybody? Hope you're well. Just finished another workout. And one thing that I was asked about just after I posted my last video, a lot of you guys were asking about overcoming the fear of failure. And so I thought I would cover this topic. I just give you 5 things to know that will help you overcome the fear of failure, but also things that are important to know when you're trying to overcome the fear of failure as well. So I think we all as human beings, we tend to fear failure, and that can be a good thing because it means we can avoid risk and we can avoid unnecessary consequences to ourselves. And so that's really benefited us historically. However, currently, I think that can also be a bad thing. Just like everything's a balance, you want to be able to take calculated risks and overcome failures, but you also don't want to be failing in everything and risking too much. So again, it's a balance. But here are 5 things that you can do. Maybe once you've researched something and you've kind of always wanting to be starting something, but you haven't quite got there yet, and you're a little bit in your head, just a little bit worried about what might happen and a little bit concerned that things might not go the way that you want them to. That's absolutely fine. That's absolutely normal. So like I said in the beginning, here are 5 things that you should know in order to try and overcome your fear of failure, but also things that are just really important to know. So number 1 is that failure isn't actually a destination unless you make it. So it's not really a permanent thing. Let's say you start a business and tomorrow it doesn't bring in any profit, or it brings in less profit than you might have wanted. Then in your head that's a failure, but that's actually just a snapshot in time from when you started to where you are now. And again, it's important to look at things as a process and also evaluate why things didn't work. But if you look at things as a process, this day where things, or this period where perhaps things haven't taken off, that's actually not necessarily a failure. In the long term, that's just a short-term failure. It's only a true failure if you leave it there at that point and you give up. So if you were to continue going, perhaps actually that business would grow and become more profitable. And so that's the thing that's really important to remember, is that failure isn't a destination unless you decide it to be. Now again, that's not a hard and fast rule that applies to everything. Well, it is, but the thing is, you might decide to give up on certain things, and that's okay as well, because we do have finite resources. But just know that things only really end if you give up on them. Now the exception to that is if you're working with someone else, or a relationship or something else that relies on somebody else. But if you're running your own business, if you're choosing when to study, if the things and the motivations are internal, and the processes are internal, then the only true thing that stops you is when you give up yourself. So remember, just if you suffer one failure, or one thing doesn't go to plan, or if it happens a couple of times, this is actually just a little period, like a snapshot. And actually in the long term, if you learn from it, if you grow from it, it may actually become a success in the long term. And again, success is also a temporary thing as well, just remember that. But just know that failure is a temporary thing if you want it to be, okay? So that's number 1. Number 2 is, what is actually the worst that can happen? So sometimes when we think about starting something and we're afraid to do it, we do think about what's the worst that can happen. Perhaps if it's, like I said, a business, you think of losing all your money, getting into debt. If it's a relationship, you think of all the consequences. If it's making a new purchase or something, or, if you start posting things on social media as maybe part of your business, you might be afraid of people's, their comments and everything. And that's absolutely normal. And, that's fine to be afraid of them at first. But just know that actually sometimes we do overthink things, and that's also part of being human as well. But you have to learn to recognize what your overthinking is and what the objective reality is. So a lot of times when you're worried about how people might react to something new about you, or like I said, if you were starting a business or just starting something, or maybe you change the way you look and you're worried about how people might think or react, yeah, they might actually react badly. But oftentimes what I've found is when I've started things or told people about them, the reaction is mostly indifference. So I don't know if people recently just died inside or something, but actually, the worst reaction that you expect, actually, it doesn't usually happen. And again, like I said before, historically, overthinking and overcalculating risk has really benefited us as a species, and perhaps that's why it's so common in us today. But just know a lot of the things that you think, oh, that's definitely going to happen, it probably won't. And even if it does, it probably won't happen in the way that you think it is, or as bad as you think it is, okay? So just remember that part as well, okay? So that's number 2, is what is the worst that can happen, okay? So number 3 is just know that if you are afraid of starting something, that people won't always support you at first. And that's really important to remember, because when you're starting something and you are afraid of failure, it's really normal, and actually it can be quite healthy to seek out other people as a support mechanism. But just know that if you're starting something new, that people might not necessarily support you at first. Now that isn't actually a bad thing, because it can teach you the strength that you have within, but just know that if you are relying on that support, it might not come. But just know that that's also a temporary thing as well. You know, people might, if things do take off, and when they do hopefully take off for you, those people might just come back and support you. And again, you can look at those people and say, oh, they were fake, they weren't there for me when things were hard. But again, it's human nature. You know, if you are dreaming, if you are going after goals that, you know, normal people don't think about, or they think that's stupid, that's unattainable, people will just write that off automatically. But when they see that you're actually going after things, it's also like awakens an inspiration in them, and they want to be part of it too. You shouldn't look down too harshly on them. So just realize that people's support is very, you know, it's very seasonal, it's very fluctuational. So just be prepared that when things are difficult, or when you're starting and when you are afraid of failure and you're particularly vulnerable, just know that people's support might not always be there for you. That's really important to know. Okay, so that was number 3. All right, that's number 3. So number 4 was actually, I'm not going to lie to you, when you are afraid of starting something and you are going on a journey, whatever that might be, like I said, a business, studying, or just changing something about yourself, things are going to be hard, and I'm not going to lie to you about that. And I think it's important that you should know that before you start, because, like I said, we do overthink risks, but also you don't want to underthink things as well. And you should know that things are difficult. Even if you're passionate about them, even if you have the best job, the highest paid job in the world, there will still be things you dislike about it, or things that are difficult about it. And you should know that before you start, and it's really important to research and look into things that you're getting into. But just know that things will be hard, and I'm not going to lie to you and say things are just going to be easy, overcome your fear of failure, and that's it, everything's done. But just know that actually you have to make the decisions for yourself as to what is worth suffering for, and what is worth overcoming, and what is worth leaving. You know, you can't not give up on everything, and you can't just give up on everything, okay? Because the thing is, if things are hard, things are going to be hard whether you like them or not, okay? So it's deciding whether you do the things that you like, even if they're hard, or whether you do the things you don't like, which are also going to be hard. They might be a bit easier, but then again, in the long term, will you be happy? I think a lot of people who maybe they are afraid of failure, or maybe they didn't actually start something that they wanted to, in their head, in the back of their head, they always have this what if, and they're only like one what if away from like a truly happy life. They think, you know, this is actually an idea that was described in the book, The Courage to be Disliked. Essentially, the narrators describe that a lot of people, when they don't go after their dreams, they live a discontent life, and in the back of their head, they're always saying like, oh, you know, if only when I was 16 I did this, that, the other. And actually, they kid themselves that they were just one if away from just changing their whole life. But actually, like I said, things can be quite hard, and that's something we all know. And especially if you've started something new, you will appreciate how difficult things can be. And so in reality, you're never actually just one what if. I mean, it starts the journey, but there's a lot more to it than that. And so would you rather live a discontent life and then just like live in this fantasy world where you're always just one what if away from something? Or would you rather live like a real life that's actually real, but it might be hard, it might be difficult, but the success and the lessons you learn, they feel earned because you went through that hardship, and you know everything that you did was true to you and true to yourself, and you have that true experience to call upon, as opposed to just living a life of discontentment and then towards the end just thinking, oh damn, you know, I was only one what if away from doing it. You know, I could have done anything, you know, it's not that hard. I could have done it when I was younger, when, you know, in reality, it's not as easy as that. So yeah, number 4 is things are going to be hard, okay? Number 5 is that failure, actually, when you learn from it, and when you're starting something new, the lessons you learn from it, like we said, it's a transient period from point number 1. So if you keep going with it and you change your tactics, or perhaps you change your approach and you learn a lot of things, you'll actually become better at starting things. So, and learning new things, because you'll become a better learner and better at improving yourself and developing adaptations to suit your needs and suit the difficulties around you. So that's really good because, for example, say you started a business, like I said, I use this example a lot, but it's just the easiest one to explain. You go through a difficult time, you have a failure, and then you learn from it. Then actually when you start something else, like perhaps you start studying for a degree that's part-time or just anything really, then you have developed the specific skill set in that business field, but you've also developed your ability to learn and adapt, and that's a really important transferable skill to whatever you choose to do. So that's why it's really important, because then you can actually, as you become good at one thing after you learn from your failures, you might notice that you suddenly become better at a lot of other things together, and that kind of simultaneous effect, that kind of amplification of learning is really, really beneficial, especially if you do have quite complicated long-term goals. Not complicated, but they can be, a little bit unachievable for most people, and so you might actually require a development of more than one skill. So as you learn from your failures, you'll actually be able to learn skills faster, and that's a really useful thing to be able to do, actually, not just for businesses but life in general. So yeah, those are 5 things that you should know in terms of overcoming your failure, or your fear of failure. I hope you guys enjoyed this content, and if you like the content, then don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. I'm sick of saying that, but it really does help with the YouTube algorithms, because if you liked it or you found it helpful, and you just engage with it in this way, it just means that more people are likely to get recommended it, and then it can benefit them in that way. So yeah, I'd really appreciate that. And if you do get a chance and you do like these videos, don't forget to check out my books or any of the links in my description, just to keep up with all the work that I'm doing and all the stuff that I do try and put out. And yeah, if you have any feedback, just let me know, and it's really good to have discussions with you guys in the comments as well. So yeah, take care and stay safe.